Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing alright. Let me check my sound. Always check your sound. I did a show yesterday, called Fault Lines. It's a radio show. It's also online, but also on the radio. I went into studio. I get enamored when I go into studio. And when I do go into studio, I often say the word 1,000 times when I'm talking to my wife. Hey, I need to go to studio. You need anything when I pick up, after I come back from studio? Yeah, on my way back from the studio, I'm going to be doing X. Do it 1,000 times a day. It feels awesome to say it. But one of the things that I enjoy doing on the show is the back and forth. I actually like the debate. One of those conversations ended up around immigration. Now, when I am talking to a right-winger, and I don't mean Lee, because Lee is a right-winger, but he's different. There's an anti-establishment versus establishment thing, meaning there are things that you agree with him on, if that makes sense. But there are things where you completely disagree with him on. But he's fun to argue with, if that makes sense. The issue of immigration. One of the things I'm always wary of is the arguments that right-wingers make on immigration. Ultimately, they just don't like it, and they find reasons to not like it. I was in a conversation with a gentleman on the show. I want to play a clip from the show because he says something that I thought was absolutely dodgy, that I couldn't get my hands on anything to prove that it was dodgy, and I wanted to debunk this nonsense that's being spewed by this representative from the state of Louisiana. But I'm going to show the video first. When he said the number, I was like, that sounds dodgy. That doesn't sound right. That sounds such a paltry figure. There's no way that you're complaining about this. Nevertheless, he was. And Louisiana was in such dire poverty. They were holding out the can for other states to get a quarter. That they couldn't deal with the influx of DACA recipients coming into the country. And the wild part is, if we evict DACA recipients, it would cost us money to do so. It's amazing once you look up the stats and you figure out how much it costs versus how much we get for it. Whatever. Let's listen to him. I'm going to make this fast. This one video is not going to be long. This is Fault Lines. And I'm doing this for two reasons. One, you get to see the show. Two, I was kind of proud of my performance on the show because the first time around I was like a deer in headlights. But two, I think it's a good debate. And I enjoy the back and forth. Let's take a look at the video first, and we'll talk about it after. This is Fault Lines.
From Central America.
On this Republican Party, I was.
And by the way, before I start this, I often say that whites don't regard their history honestly. And I'm going to expand that to Americans. Don't regard their history honestly. This debate on the immigration that's taking place here expands into a more honest conversation, but the constraints that Republicans often use is often the constraint that media to some degree uses. They act as if the problem of debate started at the border. Everything, all of the debate is at the border, and whether or not we should let people in or kick people out. I'm saying that debate is fundamentally dishonest in the scope to which the debate is had. And the scope needs to be widened to get a more contextual view of what's taking place in regards to this conversation. We start to do that here. And I want to expand upon it. So let's take a look at the conversation. This is Fault Lines, Lee Stranahan, Jamal Thomas, Garland Nixon. And I can't think of the representative from Louisiana. He used to be a representative. The guy's a Republican. Let's hear him out.
One of the many people now who looked at both.
This is
parties
Garland.
And I said,
it's not him yet.
Two parties is, too similar when it comes to war, when it comes to certain things that I'm not happy with, and so I become an independent because I jumped out of that, seeing that both. So I understand where you are because there are people that see one party as more aligned with their values, and that's reasonable. I'm just a person who saw both, and I'm like, I'm out of that.
Now this is an issue where you guys, Jamal, you're gonna disagree on this. I know.
Can you guys hear this? I'm making sure you can hear it. I did this once before and you guys can hear it. Alright, sounds like you can hear it. Jamal wants free healthcare for Mexico. Mexico already has universal healthcare. Alright, So we're having trouble with the volume. Damn it. The volume is always... It's very low to your mic. No. It's not held to my mic. For whatever reason... Alright, I'm going to play this closer to the mic so you guys can hear it. Twitter is weird with this. For whatever reason, Twitter doesn't translate sound all that well, even when I use the desktop audio, like when I push the sound to the audio. So, let's try this. Alright.
And you agree with that, right, Albert?
Absolutely.
It's like the issue where you guys agree with Albert on this. I know we've had him on before talking about it, but I'll tell you who, she's not here right now. Holly Hood. I hope Holly's listening, because I have said, and it's true in my opinion, that the immigration issue is one. The issue of illegal immigration, one of my arguments against it is that it has negatively affected the black community. And you agree with that, right, Albert?
Absolutely. A perfect example was in 2014 when Obama opened the doors to the so-called children from Central America. 1,500, only 1,500 he dumped onto Louisiana. It cost the state of Louisiana $10 million in the first 3 months to treat their diseases and their illnesses and to get them into schools. The money, the $10 million, in that first 3 months came out of funds set aside for poor people, many of them minority people.
And
that was a choice.
American people too, right?
Yes.
Let's be honest, that was a choice.
Americans who have been standing in line for a generation.
But Jamal's got a comment.
That's a choice. The city, New York, they didn't have to do that. I mean, they didn't have to drop their money or take their money from the poor part of the budget. They chose to do that. You understand that, right? I mean, that's not one of those situations where it's an act of God that's requiring us to do this particular thing and this particular behavior and attack these particular people at the low end of the economic scale. That was a choice.
They could have took it from the military budget. They could have took it from
the military.
anywhere.
What's the military?
I gotta be honest, I wasn't thinking about the military budget. But the point is not necessarily wrong. The reason why I wasn't thinking about the military budget, I assumed that they were talking about state funds. Either way, it's a choice. Louisiana chose to do that. Louisiana chose to do that. You have a Republican system that chose to pit one part of the economic distribution against another part of the economic distribution and say, we're going to take the funds from the lowest part, as opposed to actually doing something from somewhere else, from some of the more affluent areas, to take those funds in order to deal with what they consider to be, quote unquote, the dumping of people who are fleeing their particular situations. That's the first point. It is a choice. As a flat fact, it is a choice. It didn't have to come from any one of those places. Unless the government of Louisiana is stripped of their powers. For whatever reason, they're powerless. We're utterly powerless to do anything with our budget. We're stuck with doing anything with our budget. We can't find $10 million from anywhere else in our budget but this low part of the economic distribution scale. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. He's a Republican, and as a Republican, that's the way he looks at it. I'm looking at it at the lower part of the distribution scale. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, we have these deficits now because, these people were dumped into our state. Goddamn Obama. Did you hear the amount that he said? $10 million. $10 million. He comes up saying, we're a poor state. Okay. How poor is Louisiana? And Louisiana is so poor they can't deal with $10 million. Let's put that in context. Now, I couldn't fact check that there. And maybe it's not even a fact check. This idea of poverty, let's be honest, that's a certain level of subjectivity in the words that are being used here. So let's put more context and create more concrete narrative around what he's saying. Because look, I could have $1 million in the bank, and if I don't want to give the homeless guy $10, then hey, I don't necessarily want to do that. I don't have enough money to do that. Is it true that I don't have enough money to do that? I can come up with all sorts of reasons why I can't necessarily afford to give this guy $10. But at the end of the day, I chose not to give him $10. In my head, maybe you might say he's being technically dishonest, whatever. And I'm talking about this thing of we can't afford to give this guy $1 with $10 million in the bank. The argument here is they could not afford to get around $10 million in resources to make sure that these people had what they had without attacking the lower income distribution scale in Louisiana. And the number is $10 million. Fair enough. What is the budget of Louisiana? Right? Isn't that the operative question? If you're saying we're a poor state, fair enough. What is the budget of Louisiana? What are you spending your money on? What's the budget of Louisiana? If we're talking about poverty and everything else, to some degree, we need to know the budget to know what we're talking about. And if you're telling me $10 million is this extravagant amount of money, we should know the numbers that we're talking about. The budget of Louisiana going back in 2016, $29.6 billion. All right. Have a calculator. Comes with every computer. Let's work this shit out. 10 million. And there's nothing fudgy about this calculator. This is not a progressive device. This is not a lefty, thing trying to impeach the right winger. This is just a calculator. That guy, that representative, could pull it up on his computer also, if the computer wasn't too expensive to buy. Divided by 29.6 billion dollars. That's all right. What do we get? I'm doing this because I want to see what percentage is $10 million out of a $29.6 billion budget. Let's see. Now, that number comes up to be 3.3 times 10 to the negative 4. That's literally 0.0000. In fact, let's write it out, just so you can see what percentage that is of the budget. 337. 0.0000337. I think I'm doing that right. That's the percentage of the budget that $10 million represented. When you hear the right winger saying that, oh my God, we can't afford this. This is too expensive. Oh my God, we're a poor state. We're a poor state. We must take this out of the lower end of the income distribution scale. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. 0.0003 is too much to bear. That's too much to bear. And I think what it ends up being when you add the percent, it's like 3.37. And maybe a little off. There's a decimal point here or there. But my point is, either way, that is such a tiny percentage of of what they're spending. I am not even against the argument made by the states of saying, look, if you want to bring in DACA recipients, you need to support or pay for the DACA recipients. I am even okay with that, from the meaning some kind of federal block grant that goes directly to. Fair enough. If Obama wants to fight for the DACA recipients, fair enough. But don't tell me that $10 million is too much to bear to deal with certain whatever the abnormalities or illnesses that the people are getting when they're coming across the border. And I don't even know if I believe all of that. I wanted to put numbers on what the person was saying because I wanted you to see the reality of what they consider to be too much. It's too much. $10 million is too much. Out of a $29 billion budget, $10 million is too much. We can't bear it. We can't afford it. We can't deal with these people coming into our countries. It's too much. Yeah. Let's keep going. Let's hear the rest. I want to give him his due. And actually, to be honest, the rest of the conversation essentially goes that way. There's one point that I want to make here. Secondary point to this. We need to be honest about this conversation. Why are people coming into the border of the United States? Do you think they're doing it just for shits and giggles? Meaning, do you think if their country was intact, they will come running across the border, taking this treacherous path in order to get to the country? The argument that takes place in this country usually boils down to what's taking place directly at the border itself. And I'm saying that argument is nonsense. We've toppled Guatemala. We've taken down Venezuela. We're attacking Venezuela right now as we speak. When Reagan was in office, Reagan was essentially getting money from Iran, who was supposedly an enemy because we toppled their country when they wanted to give their people more oil revenue, and used it to attack the Sandinistas because he didn't like the lefty government. We've been setting fires. This idea of a Monroe Doctrine, where we've decided we have domain over what takes place over South America. When Guatemala decided they wanted to push back against worker rights because the company itself had taken control over pretty much all of the edifices of progress in their country. Bernays comes into the country, comes up with a propaganda clip, and gets the United States to believe that modest reforms from the standpoint of work was the same thing as a communist overthrow of Guatemala. They put in a brutal dictator in order to keep what was taking place with United Fruit in place, because those workers wanted some level of worker protections and worker rights. Don't give me this shit about everything taking place at the border. You set fire to one place in South America after the next. And now you're turning around after setting fire to all of these places. Why are you coming into my house? How angry that you're coming into my house now that I've set fire to yours. The media pushes this narrative and never actually have the honest conversation of why. Why? Why? When Hillary Clinton got on the debate stage and lied through her teeth about assisting a coup in Honduras. In this moment, we are directly affecting what is taking place in Venezuela and Nicaragua. Why? Why do you outright believe what these guys are saying? And the sad part is, they're not even saying it. They're just not saying it at all. These goddamn immigrants keep coming into this country, and we have no idea why they're coming into this country. Is it something to do with us deciding we're going to have dominion over South America and Central America, and have a dominion over those places? If we want to topple a government, if we want to rape them of resources, if we want to put in a strong man, if we want to put in a dictator, they need to shut the fuck up and just deal with it, because we have dominion over their territory. Oh, and by the way, stay in your fucking territory that we've set afire. These are not honest conversations. That's my point. The honest conversation is not set fires in other people's countries. And hey, maybe when you don't set fires in those people's countries, maybe they won't come streaming into yours. These are refugees. For all intents and purposes, these are refugees. They're fleeing violence and chaos. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Now, you may have somebody come to the border saying, I'm fleeing this particular zone and that particular zone. I'm asking a more fundamental question of why is the countries that way? If they are fleeing chaos, why are they fleeing chaos? What were the things that caused that chaos? And if you had anything to do with that at all, which we did, newsflash, we did. There's no honest appraisal of history that doesn't take into account what we were doing in this kind of expansion, soft and hard power view of South America. The media is not being honest. The media doesn't even bring this up. The media just talks about immigration from the standpoint of the border. And that particular guy who was on that particular radio station was having that particular conversation about $10 million out of a $29 billion being too much to bear. Too much to bear. Oh, the backs of Louisiana. And then cut from the lens of they're attacking African Americans. This is playing one against the other in a situation where you don't have to. I don't accept that argument, sir. $29 billion, $10 million. I'm sorry, that's a nonsense argument. That's a nonsense argument. If you want to push back and say that the Obama administration should have paid for those people coming into the country, okay, fair enough. You have a $1 trillion military budget. I'm pretty sure Obama could have pulled $10 million out of his dresser to give to you. I'm pretty sure one of your cronies in the Republican Party could have pulled $10 million just out of their sock drawer to give to the program. But whatever, you're on a radio station complaining that $10 million out of a $29 million budget is too much to bear. And know what they're talking about, what he's screaming about. These people dumped on the country. They're fleeing chaos. Fleeing chaos. It's amazing. Alright, so let's see. like I said, I don't want to keep this one too long because I don't want this one to drag on. But fault lines, you can hear the entire conversation for yourself. Balthazar, you can't complain about $10 million chosen to be taken from the military when the military regularly loses track of billions and billions of dollars, like talking about 5,000 jobs in a country of 330 million. Yes. Now, to be fair to him, he's talking about the state. But gotta be honest, it doesn't really matter. This argument that the state had no other capacity to pull $10 million other than from this low income distribution, and then politically motivated comes out and says, hey, these immigrants are taken away from blacks. That's a choice. That's a choice. I'm sorry, that's a choice. You have control of your budgets. That's a choice. That's an absolute choice. All right, I'm going to end this because I want to go into the very next one. I assume you were referring to a specific segment. Yeah, I'm going to put the segment at the bottom so you guys can see it for yourself. The segment was good. I mean, it was a great conversation. We ended up getting around to this whole thing of immigration and us setting fires in other people's countries and everything else. But I just want to nail that point down that $10 million. He's saying we have a poor country. We have a poor country. We have a poor state. We have a poor state. I wanted to put into real numbers what he's talking about from the standpoint of what he's having a difficult time covering. $10 million out of a $29 billion budget. I ended on this. All right, guys. There's several YouTube videos with him explaining. Convo about immigration in low-income communities is relevant. The left ignores, the right blows it out of proportion. This is what I would agree with you on, Gardno. If I believe that I am on the low end of the income distribution scale, and I believe that my job may be taken by somebody coming into the country, as a worker, I may be bothered by that. The second question that is never really asked, though, is the capitalist involved in this process. It is the capitalist that makes the determination to give that person a job and says, I can give that person $3 less as opposed to this American worker. That's the capitalist making that choice. Everyone always looks at the immigrant who's fleeing some kind of hellhole. All the incentives play for that person to stream across the border. Why wouldn't he? You've set his country on fire. I'm just saying. Now, you can say the left ignores that. Maybe. I suspect the left gets more along the lines from the moral standpoint of these people are fleeing, they need our help. Not to mention the reason why they need our help is to some degree we've instigated certain processes. And the right does blow it out of proportion, yes. My argument is very specific here, though, Garden. $10 million out of a $29 billion budget is laughable. And if it mattered that much, then you should get Obama to pay for it. Because look, I'm sympathetic to the argument. If you're making a point of saying, look, you're bringing certain people into the country. We don't even agree that you should bring people into the country, but at least you pay for it. But that's not the argument that they take. That's not the argument they take. They just don't want them in the country in the first place. So, I'll end it on that. They control their budgets in Louisiana. They don't have to take the $10 million from the low end of the economic distribution. They do it intentionally. If you fully believe that, then yes, you should have challenged Obama on that and got Obama to pay for it. Fair enough. Stop setting fire to their countries. And maybe they'll stop streaming here. Just saying. Thanks, guys.